Have you ever gone fishing with your son?
No, never.
I would have liked to have gone fishing with my son.
The only child of Leonidas we learn about is his daughter, who ends up being the mother of the main character, so it's odd that Leonidas would reminisce about his unimportant son before his death.
Spartans! Every breath that you have taken has led you to this moment.
So how many of the actors were given the instruction, be Gerald Butler, or interpreted their role that way?
Persians come to make slaves of us all.
Only we get to enslave other people and build our civilization off of slave labor and war. A spearhead lying under what appears to be a small pile of rocks has remained hidden for over 2 millennium. Considering the hoops you normally have to go through to find Isu artifacts, this one was surprisingly simple. After Origins, I thought Ubisoft was going to recommit to giving the modern day gameplay some direction and purpose like they did back with Desmond. After only a minute of Layla and Blonde Girl talking about this spearhead, it's over and we don't see them again for almost the entire game. And most of this scene isn't even animated, it's just voiceover during an animus loading screen. I cared as little for these sections as the next person, but that didn't mean I wanted them completely excised from the game. I wanted them to be made better with some unique gameplay. You see, that's the problem with Ubisoft. They can't learn from criticism because they never agreed with any of it, which leads to passive-aggressive changes where they act something people made fun of them for instead of improving it.
If this book is right, this spear, this story, it will change everything.
How many times has this promise been made in the series? Every damn time they go looking through the past, it holds the promise of changing everything. But guess what? Nothing ever changes. There's always another game where the status quo hasn't budged an inch despite the assassins accomplishing their goals.
The DNA found on the spear has identified 2 different individuals. You're going to have to pick which strand of DNA to pursue. The choice is yours.
Because there are 2 blood samples on the spear, Layla has to pick which one to use. I'm pretty certain she could hop into one memory and see if that person is carrying Leonidas' spear around and give the other a try if not. But the game presents this as a choose wisely moment. It's really just a paper-thin excuse for letting you pick which gender you want to play as. If you aren't an assassin and you don't follow a creed, can you really call this Assassin's Creed? I kind of figured those 2 things were mandatory. After all, you can't make a Witcher game if you aren't playing as a Witcher, though this game tried its best to do just that. I fully admit to making the mistake of playing as Alexios instead of Cassandra. I guess it's my fault for wanting to play as the same gender as myself in a game that gives me the choice. But Ubisoft picked Cassandra as the canon protagonist and hired a clearly much better voice actress for her. How does the Animus account for player choice? There's a meta-narrative going on here. The Animus is supposed to allow you to relive genetic memories as they happened, which doesn't work if you are choosing the outcomes. The game even has wildly different endings depending on what you choose.
You bought a vineyard, Marcos? A vineyard?
Why not? I like wine, you like wine, everybody likes wine.
Meet Marcos, the cousin Roman of ancient Greece. This game's identity problems need to be professionally diagnosed. Not only does it try to be a Witcher game, but you can also find elements of Shadow of Mordor, what with the combat system, the random mercenaries that attack and can be recruited, and even choice of weapons. Don't think I didn't notice that Alexios uses a broken spear as his offhand weapon, much like you use a broken sword in Shadow of Mordor. It's ironic when you think about it, since Shadow of Mordor was once called an Assassin's Creed clone, while now the shoe is on the other lame foot.
Be careful. You're alone now
Since my parents died?
Maybe you should be the main character then, or at least until we hear more of Alexios' backstory. Speak of the devil. The flashback that shows a happy childhood leading to tragedy has been triggered. Here's an idea. Rather than have people triggering flashbacks by saying something that reminds Alexios of his past, just start the game's prologue during his childhood and let us experience it ourselves. After being chased from his home in Sparta, Alexios stole a boat and sailed into a storm. Somehow he held onto the spear of Leonidas even while unconscious and floating in the sea.
How about we make a deal? I do something for you. You do a few things for me.
Who in their right mind would find a child unconscious on the beach and think to themselves, sweet, new hire.
Another Cyclops will take everything away. I can't protect you from him forever. He'll kill me too.
Marcos borrowed money from the Cyclops to purchase a vineyard, and now the Cyclops is coming for his money or Marcos' head. I would assume the deal is that Marcos would pay the money back using profits from the vineyard, but Marcos hasn't even gotten up and running with it yet.
Tell me, how do you feel about killing a general in Megaris?
Who is this general?
They call him the Wolf.
When hiring a mercenary to kill someone for you, it is normally helpful to provide the name. As we'll learn, the Cult of Kosmos is in control of Sparta, so if they want a Spartan general dead, they could pretty easily accomplish it on their own.
No one on this island is allowed to say that word!
Did he say Cyclops?
Did it hurt your feelings? I don't like it when people call me that!
Every single one of your men you have sent to shake down Marcos has called you the Cyclops. Besides that, you do realize you are trying to drown a man who only has one working eye himself for saying the word Cyclops. If the cult want to get rid of Alexios' family due to them being descended from Leonidas, they probably should have killed them all at once, not drop the youngest and most harmless off a cliff while making the rest watch. Alexios should have landed in the same area his sister fell, and then discovered that she survived the fall too. But Cassandra is nowhere to be found when he wakes up.
The Wolf of Sparta is my father.
Instead of having someone else kill your father, the game gives you the choice of doing it yourself. The ship makes a full return in this game after being relegated to scripted moments and origins. If you are like me, you will engage with it as little as possible and fast travel to wherever the game wants you to go. Thankfully, the game is happy to oblige, since it rarely requires you to use the ship outside of sailing to islands you haven't unlocked yet.
And he knows! Athens is next!
I would love to know why we settle on over-punctuation as the way Spartans communicate.
I've come to meet the Wolf of Sparta.
You cannot simply meet with Nikolaos.
Sure he could, he's right there. All he has to do is yell, "Hey Pops, what it be?" And then his father would notice him, be surprised that he's still alive, and demand to see him in private. Instead of that, the game begins moving the goalposts by adding several smaller tasks that must be completed first. This game is so artificially lengthened that I half expected it to send me emails on penis pumps. I wish this game was a bit more like Homer's Odyssey, meaning only 2 chapters survived and all the others were lost to time.
Here, Pater. It's been a long time.
Impossible. I saw you fall.
Yeah, but I would assume you would have looked for his body so you could bury him since you clearly didn't want to toss him off the cliff. And not finding your children's bodies would have clued you into both surviving the fall.
You must face the ghost of your past, Pater. And that is a fate worse than death.
He's facing the ghost of his past right now. Turns out it isn't that bad, since his adopted son is alive and so is his actual daughter.
Finding my mother. She's alive, Varnavas.
Why wouldn't she be? She wasn't the one thrown off a cliff.
She still lives.
Not for long, I'm afraid.
What are you talking about?
You're going to bring me her head, of course.
Are you out of your mind?
You killed the man who raised you for a sack of coins. I only assumed you wanted your family dead as much as I do.
This cult goes out of its way multiple times to create their own worst enemy out of Alexios. First, they use the Oracle of Delphi to convince Sparta to kill Cassandra, leading Alexios to flee Sparta. Then after tracking him down years later, recruit him to kill his stepfather instead of killing him, then try to get him to kill his mother even though he has no reason to want her dead. And since Cassandra is already a member of the cult, they could have just had her do it without ever involving Alexios, and she is a true believer.
I lost my mother when I was young. I have to find her. Where is she?
It's you! From the visions! The child on the mountain!
How could you know that?
You need to leave. Now.
If you didn't want to tell him anything, you shouldn't have started with, "You, the child in my dreams." It kind of lets on that you know something.
No! Guards!
I'm not here to hurt you.
That's why I kicked the door open and screamed, the universal way of saying, "How do you do?"
This is it.
Hidden chamber of the cultists. Here, all along.
It's not really hidden. It's right below the Temple of Apollo and there are people walking right past it. The door isn't even locked. Notice the door opening on its own without anyone pushing on it. Just like in Origins, Odyssey features an evil cult with a penchant for wearing dark robes and creepy masks while trying to take over the world. And it's your mission to assassinate all of them. Or not. It's completely optional this time if you want to kill them. The series about assassinating historical figures makes its most compelling element an optional side quest.
One of you is a traitor. The artifact will expose them.
Let's see, make every cultist touch the Isu artifact to reveal which one is the imposter, or just have everyone remove their mask. Cassandra was an infant when her family was broken up, and subsequently would have no memory of those events. Alexios' memory should be meaningless to her. Never mind the guy just casually strolling out of the cave before the meeting is over. I totally got the real imposter. The spear has never done this before in all the years Alexios carried it around. I guess the power of flashbacks required you to stand on Leonidas' grave. This is pretty historically inaccurate. Spartans wore no armor, wearing only leather underpants while rushing the Persians in slow-mo elegance.
What happened to the traitor, Ephialtes?
King Xerxes paid him well. But treachery breeds treachery. A contract was put on his head, and he died as he lived.
I seem to recall Leonidas sticking his spear through his mouth right after he betrayed the Spartans. For an advanced civilization, the Isu held no consistency in architecture design. Every game, their ruins have a different look to them. The one thing they could agree on was building all their important structures underground and locking them with glowing weapons, which strikes me as more than a little odd. It's like they knew they would one day become a dead civilization and decided to plan ahead. It would be like us building the Smithsonian under a mountain and sealing it with Han Solo's blaster. Since when did the Animus require VR goggles? The Animus links to your sensorium and you experience the past as if you were actually there. If you ask me, the reason the assassins never make any progress in the present is because they are ironically too infatuated with the past. Imagine if they took some initiative and started assassinating their enemies instead of reliving the lives of long-dead assassins.
You're not hard to track.
Tracking him would require following his ship because he told no one where he was going. And it would be very easy to tell if another ship was following you in these times.
You threw me off a fucking mountain!
If that's what you think, Cassandra, you must have hit your head on the way down.
That's probably not the best thing to say to someone who was thrown off a cliff as a baby. At no point during this conversation does Alexios attempt to explain what happened the night Cassandra was dropped from the cliff. He just allows her to form wrong conclusion after another until she leaves to continue her crusade against Greece. Athens was the world's first democracy, but I highly doubt they would allow the soldiers of the city to throw pomegranates at Heracles during a political debate.
The Parthenon is glorious, Pericles, but at what cost?
The image of Cleon as a purely negative figure is mainly because the two sources we have on him are both direct political rivals. So I guess the only assassination that happens in this game is character assassination.
Just tell me what to do.
First, check on my colleague, Mediochos. My friend, Phidias, needs to be taken out of Athens as soon as possible.
Anything else?
Yes. There's an ostracism vote taking place that could use your influence.
60 hours of content doesn't mean 60 hours of good content. This game is like being stuck at a really scenic DMV.
By the gods! Why did it have to be snakes?
This isn't even the first time this series has used that line. Origins did it too.
Why kill Metiochos with snakes?
We're prisoners in our own city because of Pericles and his crooked friends. The snake dealer told us it's time to send a message.
So the snake dealer convinced you that it was the best idea to kill your opponents with snakes that he sold you? Like what else would a snake seller recommend? Arrows? If you look closely, you can practically see the clock ticking by the time left on Phoebe's lifespan. Alexios should be spilling that wine all over the floor with the way he's holding the bowl.
Don't mind her. She likes to watch.
It's about time for Assassin's Creed to introduce the eccentric character that shows up in every game. In previous videos, I've often taken a sin off for this character being more interesting than anyone else in the game. This time, I'm not even bothering. Throw in as many gay and bestiality orgies as you want, Ubisoft. Nothing's changing my mind that this game is imperfectly described by the first syllable in your title.
You'll have to help me strip out of these uncomfortable Athenian robes.
Suddenly, I'm getting Super Seducer flashbacks.
I couldn't help but notice your talent for debate. Well done.
You entered the party after he finished debating Socrates. No way you heard any of it.
What clues do you have to her whereabouts?
A physician named Hippocrates may have seen her in Argos.
What else?
Alcibiades gave me the name of a woman in Corinth. That's all I have.
There is another option. In a former life, when I needed something done or someone found, I contacted a friend.
So 3 new places to search just to find Alexios' mother. Just to be clear, this game is no longer moving the goalposts. No, this is stopping the game at the 20-yard line, suddenly announcing the game is delayed, moving it to a different stadium in another city, then requiring you to win 5 more games to qualify. And then they move the goalposts a few inches away, just because. Around this point is when you start running up against the level cap that bars you from progressing on the main quest by raising the level requirement of missions well beyond what one could realistically achieve by doing main quests and the occasional side quests, resulting in enemies that can kill you in one swing and can't be stealth killed. The Plebeian Standard Edition encourages you to buy the XP boost from the store for $10 so you can skip the grind by leveling faster. I recommend you spend nothing and skip the game. Even sketchy porn sites have more consumer-friendly business practices than this. This game is fond of wasting your time, but I, dear viewer, am not, and will not waste yours by sinning every single sin that happens while Alexios follows the trail his mother Myrrine left. This entire hours-long part of the game is so full of pointless padding that it would add another 50 sins in 10 minutes to the video. Instead, I will briefly run down what happens, then award the 50 sins it rightly deserves. After her children were dropped from the cliff, Myrrine found Cassandra still alive but critically injured at the foot of it. Presumably, she didn't bother looking for her son's body or question why it was missing. She then took her daughter to the physician Hippocrates for healing. But since there was nothing he could do, he sent Myrrine to a priestess, who by sheer chance was a member of the cult that ordered Cassandra's death in the first place. She convinced Myrrine that the baby died from her injuries, and for some reason, Myrrine believed that and didn't ask for the body for burial. Then the cult raised Cassandra while Myrrine left for the coast and became a pirate for a while before disappearing again. That was many hours of gameplay that I just broke down for you, and I am happy I skipped right over it. Do you think that maybe they are trying to hide the fact that there is barely a plot behind all this filler? I see that Athens has gone with the plague filter. It's a rarely used color filter, but it has its uses, such as being a lazy visual for an epidemic.
What do you think you're doing? You're driving this mob to madness.
This is nothing!
At first, I thought the game was trying to make Cleon look crazy with sickness, since there's no mob in front of him, but actually I think the game glitched out and spawned the mob in the wrong place. because I found this mob not far away, intently staring at a statue.
I will make Athens great again!
Even in a game set over 2,000 years ago, we can't escape oh-so-clever modern political commentary.
I told Pericles the cult is in Athens. It's too dangerous.
The cult? I thought it was the sickness talking.
I'm just gonna lay it all out that Aspasia used to be the leader of the cult, so she knows very well that the cult is in Athens, but took no precautions and sent Phoebe to her death because of it. There's only one entrance into the Parthenon, so how would Cassandra get past Alexios and the rest who were right in front of the door to kill Pericles and then leave without anyone stopping her? Myrrine doesn't have the best guard on payroll for a city at war. They let a strapped Alexios walk right in during a strategy meeting. I've upgraded that spear at the Isu ruins a few times and made it look a hell of a lot more fancy. When Alexios finally reunites with his mother, it's back to how it originally looked.
When I closed my eyes, I could still see you falling. I thought I had lost you.
If only I had looked for you that night like I did your little sister.
I want to know about my real father.
He sought me out before I knew your Nikolaos. I've not heard from him in a long time.
Myrrine starts playing the pronoun game so they can put off mentioning which famous historical person is Alexios' father a little longer.
What's wrong?
Soldiers from Paros just made landfall in the cove.
After spending hours upon hours building up to this moment, they then interrupt it with random enemies attacking a beach that you have to go and stop.
I have Naxos to worry about now.
Let me help you here. We can safeguard Naxos, and then hunt down the cult together.
Do you want to know what I find to be the worst sin a game can commit is? It's not bad logic, poor dialogue, or cringy characters. It's wasting the player's time. There's at best a 10-hour experience stretched into a 40-hour one.
You need to find your father.
Who is he?
He's a difficult man to describe. He's many things.
Would one of those many things include a name?
Welcome to Atlantis.
Atlantis? Impossible. I thought it was just a myth.
Plato would have only just recently wrote about Atlantis and the era this game is set during. How can it already have been a myth?
My name is Pythagoras. I'm your father.
As goofy as this Atlantis stuff is, I would have much preferred the plot been about this instead of Alexios and his family. The most interesting parts are completely optional.
They are sealed, and the artifacts to open them are missing.
So I need to find the artifacts and return them to Atlantis?
Let's go ahead and add The Legend of Zelda to the list of games Odyssey confuses itself for.
Pythagoras was born around 570 BCE. That would make the man in that cave nearly 150 years old.
Yeah, but you know very well that the Isu have all sorts of crazy technology. How is a staff that keeps a person alive indefinitely that big of a stretch? Turns out Pythagoras is your father and wants to steal away Atlantis so the cult can't get their hands on it. To do so, Alexios must travel to 4 corners of Greece, defeat 4 mythological monsters, and retrieve the artifacts they guard. I tried finishing the Minotaur story, but after completing several annoying side quests to unlock the fight, the game informed me that the Minotaur was 10 levels above mine, meaning I might as well have been attacking it with a rusty soup can. And this is despite all the side quests to unlock it being on my level. So I made the judgment call that I didn't need this in my life, and left Side Quest Island for Sparta where I could presumably find a fraction of the main plot buried somewhere in a mess of misaligned goalposts. Only after finishing the main quest did I find out that this side quest is the main plot for Layla and the reason she's searching through Alexios' memories. And completing it gives you the actual ending, meaning Layla doesn't give a damn about Alexios' family drama either, but is forced to sift through it just like me. My level of immersion just went up a notch. So how the hell does this work? The Spear of Leonidas can allow its owner to experience the memories of Leonidas, but we are also experiencing Alexios' memories as Layla while simultaneously he experiences King Leonidas's. How deep can this even go? Can we then experience King Leonidas as he experiences someone else?
Sparta will not go to war! The Pythia has spoken. Pythia says what you tell her to say. She has been your puppet for far too long.
Back in the day, the Cult of Kosmos was much more open with the fact that they were controlling Greece by telling the Oracle of Delphi what to say right in front of Leonidas.
Your fate is sealed, son of the lion. Xerxes will unite us. He will bring order to chaos.
Earlier, Herodotus said Leonidas received the prophecy that either Sparta would lose its king or its freedom, and I would assume the lady in charge of prophecy was the one who foretold that. But hell if that happens here.
Divide the Pythia and everyone you love. Everything you stand for will perish.
Well, he does defy you, and not only does his daughter grow up healthy, she has children of her own. The cult never made any attempt on Leonidas' descendants until his grandchildren were born.
First, prove yourself loyal. Bring glory to Sparta, and redeem yourself in the eyes of the gods.
Considering that one of these two kings is a member of the cult, and Alexios being a criminal in the eyes of Sparta, the cult has the perfect setup to execute him right here. Instead, he plays along and gives Alexios the easier task of winning the Olympics.
The Spartan army fights the Athenians in Boeotia. Join the commandos there. Come back victorious, or do not return.
The Olympics will be starting soon in Elise, and our fighting champion requires an escort.
So win a war and win the Olympics and they can have their family home back. This is what we will be spending the next several hours accomplishing. And this is near the end of the game. Lagos ends up being the only way to conclusively prove which of the Spartan kings is part of the cult, and the only way to keep him alive is based on an arbitrary decision made way earlier in the game that seemingly has no connection to him. Hold up, I have to do my standard hands on hips while thinking about dialogue options pose.
What do you want from the great champion Testicles?
Testicles is not an actual Greek name from the classical era. It's a fake Greek name people have been memeing since at least the 80s. And you better believe your ass they drive this third grade humor right into the ground.
Who do you think will win the most race this year?
Athens will surely rise to the occasion.
I say Messinia!
Alcibiades speaks in nothing but entendre and Barnabas needs to learn to use an inside voice. Testicles trips over some apples and becomes a dead asshole.
Well, looks like you're the champion now.
The guy was just eaten by sharks. You can show a little remorse. This game wusses out on the Olympics, because back in these days, Olympians competed in the nude. I guess the devs couldn't make the Olympics a memorable moment in the game by creating multiple events, so they just have you do a pancration using the combat engine, and then you spend the rest of the Olympics figuring out which cult is poison on Alcibiades. Hell, my pancration glitched out and turned into a 2-on-1 with a random spectator.
I'm here to help, you idiot! Not after Megaris, not after what you did.
What did he do exactly? All I did back then was have Alexios talk to Nikolaos, spare him, then Nikolaos walked away. Yeah, he deserted the army, but Stentor acts like I killed him, and Alexios doesn't bother even explaining what happened.
There are 4 Viodian champions fighting for the Athenians.
I should have killed Nikolaos and Stentor back in the first half of the game when given the choice. Now I have to deal with him and his list of side missions and what feels like a repeat of that level.
I thought you were dead.
Does no one in this family ever look for the body to confirm if someone is dead?
Too bad you don't have a mask or a black cloak to save you this time.
You're there?
Even if you don't have enough proof to prove Pausanias is the culprit, he just admits it to Alexios while the guards drag him out of the city. Then he walks around unprotected in the street to be easily killed while carrying evidence of his guilt, allowing Alexios to prove it to the other king.
If Deimos is in Pylos, we have to stop her.
Now that we have the family house back, let's go do the stuff that matters, like finding Cassandra, who just so happened to show up again after this huge waste of time ended. The only thing that can make the main villain of the game being defeated by a tree more hilarious is if Alexios was knocked out by 1-2. Turns out that the guy shouting "Make Athens Great Again" ended up being a villain who colluded with foreign enemies to take control of a democratic nation. Cleon sends 2 unarmed guards into Alexios' cell to kill him while he walks off without even waiting for confirmation. Socrates and Barnabas, 2 people not exactly trained in stealth, snuck into this garrison in Athens, avoided the guards and stole back all of Alexios' equipment before freeing Alexios himself. The plan to take down Cleon involves a satirical play and a public discussion where Alexios acts as the flammable strawman for Socrates to set fire to. This is starting to seem more and more like sad wish fulfillment for modern day politics. Looks like Cleon is going to retaliate with a really nasty Rotten Tomatoes review. Like all other Assassin's Creed games before it, the ending just sort of shows up out of the blue and feels out of place. There's this narrative technique called rising climax that this series could bother learning.
Shit.
Cassandra was standing still while blade locked with Alexios, so either you intended to shoot Cassandra, in which case mission accomplished and no negative exclamation needed, or you meant to shoot Alexios who you had no angle on.
And what of my daughter?
Cleon fired an arrow into Deimos' back. The wound didn't look fatal. She could still be alive.
Yeah, I didn't check for a body. You know the story.
I need to go to Mount Taygetos, where it all began.
My heart was shattered on that mountain.
It's so painful that I was walking up the path that leads to it and nowhere else when you found me. Cassandra has a flair for dramatic enders, since she figured Alexios and Myrrine would come to the mountain where she was thrown off. It's very easy to convince someone with a dumb, stereotypical ploy when they have no character to begin with.
Well, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Screw you, game. You don't know what I've been through. My playtime for this mess was 48 hours. 48 hours for an Assassin's Creed game. With the main campaign wrapped up and the family reunited, the game now expects you to earn the full ending by spending another 20 hours grinding to max level so you can defeat the mythological monsters and steal Atlantis for your dad. An idea that was about as appealing to me as licking piss off a nettle. So instead, I pulled the ending footage from YouTube and that's what I'm working with here. You can find a link to this original footage down below.
Choose wisely.
Get off Indiana Jones's dick already. The staff of Hermes is what kept Pythagoras alive for over a century, and as soon as he lets go of it, he dies. I can barely go a month without dropping my phone, and that's something small and easy to carry. The artifacts were supposed to seal Atlantis and keep anyone from getting inside, but Layla just swam in no problem and presses a single button to unseal the entire place.
True knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing.
This twist actually invalidates the entire series up till now. Why care about an order of people protecting ancient secrets when there was one immortal guy who knew the score outliving them all? Odyssey is the earliest game in the series, and it's basically rendered all the other games nothing more than a slap-by between two groups who didn't know anything about anything.
Pythagoras was right. You are the key to the prophecy. You will restore the balance, Layla.
Yes, you, Layla. You are the chosen child of prophecy. Not that Desmond bastard who the Isu predicted the coming of and who martyred himself to save the world. The rules for living past your time and dying instantly really don't make much sense to me. That's still a young man's body. Shouldn't he just age naturally after relinquishing the staff?
This has been an odyssey I won't forget.
Roll credits. Oh, thank God.
From the guys who saw 300